We've all forgotten something at home or at a campground. In this case, I forgot my hiking shoes and didn't have another pair of shoes. I only had flip-flops. So we get up at 3 in the morning, we're getting ready to go out the door, and I realize I don't have my shoes. I left them in Arizona. So this is going to be not quite hiking in Death Valley. We still covered about 7 miles worth of trails, but it was a little bit slower and not quite what we normally would. So forgive me for not having those shoes available, but I still think we have a great video to show.
It's what you're doing, making me feel like I'm falling. And when you're moving, I can hear my calling. There's no one else here that I see but you. It's what you're doing that's making me feel like I'm falling. Yeah, I'm falling in love.
Today we're going to check out Death Valley National Park, and we got up kind of early, 3:30, because we're about an hour and a half, 2 hours away from where we want to watch sunrise. So hopefully we catch it. Sunrise is pretty early, so
yeah. And the wind is cranking.
Yeah.
So hopefully, since it's a drive, it won't be so bad when we get there.
And it says 4 miles an hour, but
no.
I think they missed a 0.
Yeah.
So we're going to be happy to show you a number of different hikes throughout the park and some of the other features. We started our day trying to catch sunrise at the very busy Zabriskie Point, and it was quite a special sunrise once it got started. In the late 1800s, many people came to California in search of gold, and they searched right here in Death Valley. However, they didn't find the gold they were looking for, but they did find what would become known as white gold, borax. So borax was used from everybody, from farmers to morticians to housewives. It had all kinds of different applications, and it was processed right here behind me at the Harmony Borax Works from 1883 to 1888. One of the biggest challenges for the borax company was getting the product to market, and they would have to take the borax 165 miles to this town of Mojave to put on the railroad. And you would have a wagon like this, which would be filled with the product along with 1,200 gallons of drinking water pulled by around 20 mules. So this wagon train essentially would be 100 feet long and would have to travel through Death Valley through some pretty harsh conditions. Now, borax transportation was quite expensive. They had to use these 20 mule teams, carried 165 miles over to Mojave, so it could be placed on a railroad. And that's quite expensive. And so what they had to do is they actually processed it out here in the Death Valley desert. And what they would do is bring the product up these inclines and then dump it into a boiling water solution that the steam boiler would provide the heat for, and it would actually separate the mud and the salt and the lime from the borax, and then they would place it into these cooling vats, and those cooling vats would actually have metal rods in them that the borax would crystallize and stick to. They would remove that, chip it off, and then to create more of a concentrate, they would repeat that process. And it was a lot cheaper than carrying all the waste products along with the borax. And then borax was used by just about everybody in the late 1800s, from meat packers to farmers and to even everyday household cleaning. Now, at the time, the borax company employed a lot of Chinese workers, and this flat area right here is where they would have temporary villages set up for the workers to live in. And obviously now it is all barren, but at one point this would have been a thriving area full of workers who were mining the borax. Now, you don't traditionally think of Death Valley as having water. And here at about 200 feet below sea level is Salt Creek.
It actually does sustain some life. So pupfish. Pupfish are found here usually a different time of year, but because of the changes over time and to the area and the increasingly arid environments, the pupfish have actually evolved into 10 different types of pupfish species, 2 of which have gone extinct and 3 of which more are on the endangered species list, but it's what they've had to do to adapt and survive. So we're here at, I think, kind of the end of the Salt Creek Loop Trail. You do have a little bit of water here, but I don't think we're going to get to see any pupfish today. They are quite a hardy species. They can actually withstand temperatures from near freezing all the way up to over 100 degrees. So some of the things they've adapted to over time, including the getting used to the salt. The water here is far too salty for a human to drink, but the plants in the area and everything have obviously adapted to accommodate the salt water. Another interesting fact about the creek is it actually starts up at Mono Lake, and as it travels, it evaporates, so the salt content continues to rise as it travels down.
From there, we went over to the Mesquite Flat sand dunes and walked around in the white sand, which goes on for miles. So there's really not a marked trail. You can just go out and then take your own adventure. The maximum elevation gain is about 200 feet, but we consider it moderate because walking in sand, let's face it, isn't easy.
Now, throughout all of the sand dunes here in Death Valley, there's only one water source, and it's located right below where I'm standing. And this is Stovepipe Wells, and it's at an intersection of 2 different Indian trails here in the middle of Death Valley sand dune area. Very large, vast area, and to only have one water source that you can drink out of. They would often come here to not only nourish themselves, but their animals. However, because of the winds in the area and the sand, it often would cover it. So what they did is they put a stovepipe, and there is where the name came from for Stovepipe Wells.
After the sand dunes, we made our way about an hour away to the Ubehebe and Yubihebe Crater Trail. And this is actually the first real test I had for hiking in sandals.
So what happens when you forget your hiking boots? Or shoes?
Wear your sandals.
And don't let it spoil the day.
Now, the Yubihebe craters are actually a series of about 13 different craters which are located in this area, the biggest of which is what you see here, and it is actually close to half a mile wide and up to 700 feet deep. So what caused this was a series of different explosions as molten rock rapidly came to the surface, and it flashed the groundwater that was there, basically steaming it, and it caused an explosion where you had magma water interacting with pulverized rock that flew up into the air and covered an area as much as 15 square miles. And of course it created these massive craters that you see. So it's pretty cool seeing the way that it's actually carved out of the earth and then seeing a lot of the debris that's scattered throughout the area.
At 282 feet below sea level.
That low, you should be swimming.
You should be definitely, or drowning I guess at that point. But it's very few places in the world, there are some, but very few places in the world where at this elevation it's not full of water.
Yeah.
It requires an incredibly arid climate, which this Death Valley area definitely has. There are a few places deeper, one in Russia or Kazakhstan, and then the Dead Sea between Israel and Jordan, which is like crazy deep. It's like 1,400 feet or something like that.
Yeah.
But this is definitely an anomaly to be this deep and not have, or not be full of water, not be a lake.
Well, not made from erosion or any kind of
Right.
force like that. It's actually from the shift from the different fault lines in the area. So due to the earthquakes and the seismic activity, it's actually dropped to this level.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think. Yeah, there's no erosion because you're surrounded by hills.
Yeah.
It's also one of the hottest places in the world, with a record of, gosh, 1913 or something like that.
That was the year, yeah.
Yeah, for 100 or not a negative, 135 degrees Fahrenheit. So definitely one of the hottest places. I don't know if it's, I don't think it has a record for the hottest on the planet, but I think it has a record for the hottest average temperature. So temperatures in July, August, and September rarely go below 100 degrees, and that's even at the middle of the night. So the lows are over 100. Quite warm.
I wouldn't want to be stuck here.
No, and there's no water to be drank. So whatever you bring in. So a day like today, it's upper 70s, low 80s, not bad. It's a great day for hiking around here, if you have hiking shoes especially. But my sandals are doing quite well.
Hiking sandals would be fine too.
Yeah, it'd be good.
Flip flops, you know.
And most of these are really easy hikes. From here, we're going to head over to the Devil's Golf Course and check that out. So they call it the Devil's Golf Course because back in 1934, the National Park Service had a guidebook that indicated this is an area that only the devil could play golf because it had to do with the rough texture and its large halite salt crystal formations. Now, one of the last things that we did on the day was actually took us a nice drive down Artist Drive. It's about a 10-mile paved road that you take your vehicle on, and you can check out a number of different rock formations in interesting colors. Artist Palette itself has some beautiful looks to it, and really a multitude of different colors that address the rocks. And it's a nice way to kind of finish up your day in Death Valley. We actually moved on to try to catch a drive onto the old Spanish Trail Highway, which is just south in the Tecopa, California area, but unfortunately by the time we got there, it was kind of sundown and we didn't get to see very much, or definitely couldn't film very much. But I will say you do drive a lot in Death Valley, so it kind of sucked I didn't bring my shoes, but at the same time we still got quite a bit accomplished in the amount of time that we actually had not driving. We put over 300 miles in our truck on just the one day. So gasoline, make sure that you fill up. Furnace Creek really wasn't that bad compared to, we filled up in Shoshone and it was $1.20 more per gallon. So it's not too bad. Of course, if you're coming from Nevada, stopping at gas and Pahrump, it's going to be much cheaper. Death Valley is definitely an interesting place to visit. It has some incredible landscapes and obviously you get to experience some extreme weather. I'd encourage you to go sometime between late October and early March. The winters are going to be much more habitable in this area. Gas up, as we mentioned, bring a lot of water, and also I would pack a lunch and maybe even a dinner because you are going to be on the road a lot and services are not, they're truly few and far between. So I hope this video helped you a little bit. Unfortunately, we didn't get to hike nearly as much as we had hoped to, but we will go back someday and try to finish what we were interested in doing and obviously do a video for that. If you did enjoy this video though, I would ask that you please do us a favor and give us a like, or you can share it with others. And we'd love it if you would subscribe to our channel by just clicking on that little subscribe button down below. And if you hit the little bell, you'll be notified every time we produce a new video. I want to thank you for watching today and make sure you get out there and enjoy the adventure.